Welcome back to Gardening 101, the series that's going to help you start a garden this year, no excuses. And today we're talking about containers because choosing the right container can make or break your garden, but it doesn't have to make or break your bank. We're going to talk about all your options from very budget friendly to the more moderate or expensive options. We'll talk about some important requirements and get you growing, so let's jump into it. Being 100% honest, this could be a container that you could use to start a garden, but there are three things that we want to keep in mind for our garden. The first and probably most important thing is drainage. Now, while this could eventually be a container for our garden, we would want to drill holes in the very bottom of it in order to get really good drainage because plants do not like to have wet feet. The next thing we want to consider is the size of the container. You want to make sure that your container has adequate size to hold the roots for your crops without choking them out. And when it comes to size, here are a few tips to keep in mind. Go ahead and screenshot to save. Last but not least, when choosing container, you want to think about the material. Plastic is going to retain moisture really well, so you want a lot of drainage. Fabric, on the other hand, is going to drain out really well, so make sure that it stays moist. Darker materials are going to hold on to heat, and ceramic can get really heavy, but it may dry out a little bit faster. Let's talk about some types of containers that will work pretty much all around, regardless of where you're growing. I love growing things in nursery pots like this. They come in all different sizes. That's where I put a lot of my fruit trees. If I am growing tomatoes in containers outside, they'll be in things like that. They're really fantastic. One of my favorite ways to grow is to use grow bags. They're super easy to transport. You can get a lot for a little bit of money. They are wonderful for your root crops. They come in all different sizes, so you can grow your tomatoes, you can grow your cucumbers. They're just a really phenomenal option. Aside from grow bags, the other way of gardening that I really enjoy, and this works really well if you are on a patio, if you've got a big backyard, if you are on a balcony, is to use the GreenStalk vertical planters. They're a phenomenal way to grow a lot in a very small footprint. GreenStalk specifically, in a 2x2 square foot space, you can grow up to 42 plants. And I have grown literally every type of plant you could imagine. Corn, squash, beans, potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. I've tried it all and it really works. Now, while they are a little bit more expensive, they are like a garden in a box. And if you use the code GARDENTHINGS, you can get $10 off your order. If you're growing outside, I also count raised beds as containers because you have to fill them up like a container. My personal preference are the metal raised beds, but you do also have the option for wooden ones, which have a much lower cost of entry. And even if you have a very small backyard, you can do a ton in a raised bed, especially if you're using companion planting, square foot gardening, and succession sowing. So here's your actionable step for today. Look around your house and find containers that can be used for gardening. And this can be whether you are growing indoors or outdoors. Our second actionable step is going to be to measure the gardening space that you're using. So if you're going to use a corner of your kitchen, go ahead and measure that out so you have an idea of how much square footage you actually have. If you are growing on a balcony, how much of that balcony are you going to use? Same thing if you are growing in your yard, what section of your yard is going to be for garden? Go ahead and get the square footage of that and start planning out what containers, raised beds, vertical planters you can use in that space so that we can start figuring out how we're going to procure those items. The next lesson, we're going to select our seeds and start them.